Hello and welcome to the 12th DEI Committee, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee in Westford podcast. I'm Joe Diamond, co-chair of that podcast, of that committee, and I wanted to also ask Anjali Rajput, my co-chair, to say hello as we get started.
Hello, and thank you for listening to us.
Today, we're really lucky to have with us two members of the Westford Selectboard, Andrea Peraner-Sweet and Scott Hazelton. We are sad to say that they are leaving their posts on that board, and we wanted to, in some sense, learn from them today and to celebrate their tenure as public servants for, together, 3 decades in Westford, contributing to Westford's character as an inclusive community. The DEI Committee's podcast is called Inclusive Conversations. We've had several topics. We've been able to meet with and talk to members of the DEI Committee, folks from town, public officials, on a variety of topics related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we always start this podcast by reading our vision statement, which is our vision for Westford is a town that embraces, celebrates, and draws strength from our growing diversity, is an engaged and inclusive community boasting a town government whose practices and actions display a consistent commitment to equity, and is known by current and future generations as a welcoming place that fosters an abiding sense of belonging. That resonates with a statement that was read by you, I think, Andrea, at a meeting recently, a February 25th Selectboard meeting, which reads in part that in the strategic plan recently approved by the Selectboard, Westford describes its vision as being a welcoming and inclusive community. And I think that that's sort of our watchword here today. And before the DEI Committee was created, again, by the Select Board, we thank you and the school committee. Westford was and remains, and I think is expanding its character as an inclusive and welcoming community. So we wanted to talk with you today a little bit about your experience as public officials, to learn a little bit about why you became involved in municipal government, and other important aspects of your experience, with which Anjali and I will talk with you about. Andrea Peraner-Sweet has been a dedicated public servant in Westford, Mass, with a tenure on the Select Board marked by a commitment to inclusivity, community engagement, and thoughtful governance. Serving as a Select Board member since 2010, including multiple terms as chair, she has been instrumental in initiating conversations on critical issues such as racial justice and community inclusion. Notably, she advocated for the addition of a student seat on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, reflecting her commitment to amplifying diverse voices within town governance. Beyond her municipal contributions, Andrea is a seasoned attorney with over 3 decades of experience in civil litigation, employment law, and probate matters. Her leadership has left a lasting impact on Westford, fostering a more inclusive and engaged community. And here's a little bit on Scott.
So Scott, welcome Scott to today's podcast. And I just wanted to let our listeners know that you started your journey in 2005 with the Westford Housing Authority, where you continue to serve, and you also contributed to the Pedestrian Safety Committee, the Town and School Safety Task Force, and the Commissions on Disabilities. Your leadership has been instrumental in initiatives such as the transformation of 35 Town Farm Road into affordable senior housing and a food pantry, advocating for town-wide mental health resources, and promoting sustainable practices to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Your approach to governance emphasizes practical problem solving and a deep commitment to serving the diverse needs of Westford residents.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both for having us today.
Yes, thank you.
Our pleasure. We're so glad. In fact, we should have invited you months ago, if not years ago. So we thank you for being here. As I said before, this is part of our expression of gratitude for your service. something that is always interesting to me when talking to public officials is what motivated you to become a public official, to engage in public service, and to serve Westford. So I ask you both.
I think probably many folks have heard this before, but back in the early 90s when Walmart was proposing to build a store where Cornerstone is now, I was at home complaining about this to my husband. And my husband turned to me and said, "Well, why are you complaining to me about it? Go do something." I thought, well, there's a novel idea. And at that point in time, I think I'd lived in town for probably about 5 or 6 years, and I'd never been involved in anything with the town. So I took his advice, and there was a Stop Walmart committee, and I walked into that committee. I did not know anybody, and I basically said, "Hi, I'm Andrea Peraner-Sweet. What can I do to help?" And that was my introduction to becoming involved in town affairs. That led to becoming involved in the first master plan, which sort of came out of that, and meeting more people in the master plan and working towards our first master plan, which I think was implemented in either 93 or 94. And that then led to me becoming involved in more issues and more familiar with issues coming out of the master plan, which then led to a run for the planning board, and I guess you could say the rest is history.
And you served on the planning board before the select.
I served on the planning board for 13 years before the select board.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't realize it was that long of a
That's a
tenure.
long journey. Yeah,
Yes.
I had no idea.
And throughout that journey, and I won't name them all, I just served on various committees and chaired various committees, including the Stupinski Land Acquisition Committee, the master plan for the whole Stony Brook complex there when we were doing that. I've been on the Affordable Housing Committee and then the Affordable Housing Trust Committee. I was on what at that time was the Permanent Town School Building Committee, so lots of committees throughout my service for the town. And I would say right now, as I come to an end on the select board, I've been on the DEI committee. I've been the select board representative for the DEI committee, for the Affordable Housing Trust, and for the Affordable Housing Trust Committee.
Wendy Lloyd, who helped us prepare for this interview, sent a note to me about, as I said, we need to check on the history, the bios, and she said, don't just focus on their service on the select board. Focus on the committees as well. So I appreciate hearing about that. Scott.
Yeah, so I've always enjoyed government. I mean, I was in high school. I was in youth and government for state mock UNs. I mean, it's always been a interest of mine. And at one point, I just asked. I was involved with the Scouts, and Al Loisel was a select board member who was also a Scout leader. So, Al, what do you need for help in town? And he said, affordable housing, but it needs some new blood, and has a new chair, a selectman named Chris Romeo at the time. So like Andrea walked in and said, "Hi, I'm Scott. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm happy to help." And but I do have a disabled daughter, and at the time she was young, and we'd gone through the process with the school system of bringing her in, and wonderful Dr. Dwyer, then the SPED director, great commitment to have her be part of this town and do what they could to keep her here, to be part of the fabric of the schools, the plays, the sporting events, and so forth. And yet when she turned 22, there'd be no place for her. I mean, she lives with us, but there'd be no place for an adult here because we didn't have any group homes. So that became my sort of passion, if you will, on the housing committee, and I brought it up. It was wonderful. You talk about a welcoming town. Andrea was, I can help with that. Diane Holmes, Carl Lyman. I mean, and this whole committee of people said, "That's great. We should do that." And they, it took us a while, and I learned, a committee which is not a lot of power or policy, but just a advisory committee, isn't the place always to get things done. It's a place to put out ideas, but you really have to work with elected boards to get there. Planning board and select board in particular. So I made that sort of progression to select board, and then it's a question of where are the holes to be filled. So I was once a firefighter EMT. They were going to build a fire station. I'll be part of that, and it became a permanent member of the permanent town building committee. My sister was a librarian. My aunt was a librarian. The library is being built. Okay, I'll help it with that. So on the library working group, and over time, pedestrian safety. We had a resident who had a daughter who was disabled, and there's a commission on disabilities we could form. Okay, so I would work with her on it. At town meeting, she didn't show up. I had to speak to it because I was the chair. I don't honestly had to. I was glad to. So I became a founding member of that commission because it's part of my daily life to work with disabled, and then along came with DEI. One of my fond members will be working with the Indian community of Westford on Indian Independence Day, and being part of that celebration for I think 5 years now. It's really it's a great community to be part of.
Scott, you were part of the select board. I'm sorry, the planning board as well.
No. I learned that's one of the paths you have to take. No, of
course,
never went there.
But many other things.
Just as a follow-up question to your tenure with many other commissions and committees and select board, if I can ask you, which role or which committee was the most challenging for you? Because select board is always in the limelight, right? So anybody would assume that it's the toughest place to be in, and why? But do you think that is that true? Is that not true? Maybe something else is much more difficult and challenging?
No, it's the most challenging in the sense that because it is visible, and you make decisions that someone doesn't like.
We can't please all the people all the time.
Right.
And it's a unique experience to be served papers because people don't want you to build an asphalt plant. Be eating dinner and someone comes to your door and literally serves you papers because we're being sued as a town. That was not fun. Overrides are never fun because it's always, a tension of those with fixed incomes versus those who have got kids in schools and need more services. So, yeah, there are really hard decisions that we have to make that invariably are not popular with somebody, but yet we have to make them.
First of all, I just wanted to say that Anjali and I, on behalf of the committee, want to express our gratitude also for your leadership in terms of creating that committee. Again, I think it grows out of the character of the community that's been around for many, many years. It's something that is always interesting to us and to me in particular is as you look back on your careers on the select board and other public boards, what are some of the accomplishments that you remember, that you take pride in, that you would share?
So I think a couple of things. I mentioned the whole master planning for what is now this, it's actually the Stony Brook Veterans Complex. And when that started, there were and I chaired that committee, and there were, I think, about 18 to 20 people on that committee. And the way that parcel of property was initially looked at, it was divided up into various groups. Housing had a parcel, conservation had a parcel, the town had a parcel, water had a parcel, and we were trying to master plan this whole parcel, and everybody wanted to hold on to their own interest. And it took more than a year to really work through all of the various interests, all of the conflicting interests at certain times. But we came to, and Rec had a parcel too, I must not forget about recreation. But we, with a lot of hard work, we came to finally an agreement to what you see today with a school there, recreational fields, affordable housing, preserving conservation land and water land, that land for the water department that needed to be preserved. And so I really look at that as a terrific accomplishment because it serves so many needs for the town. We worked really, everybody involved worked really hard to make that happen. I mean, I remember the first meeting when people were screaming at each other. So I'm very proud of that, and I'm very proud of all of the open space on the various committees that I've been on that we've preserved. You know, the Stupinski land, East Boston camps that we've preserved. I think that's so important for our town and has helped to preserve the character of our town.
That brings me to the follow-up question,
Sure.
Andrea, because you talked about your challenge and then you also said that people were screaming at each other,
Yeah.
right? So what are the skills, if you are a member in any of those committees where there are issues like that, what are the skills that makes one person continue their service or continue their dedication towards the cause that they have signed for? What are those specific behaviors?
Well, I think, I think people need to recognize and understand that there are differing opinions, that people come in with differing mindsets. I think as a member, you need to be able to listen to one another, to hear what one another are saying to each other, and to do it and to be respectful of one another on a committee. And I mean, yes, that was the first committee, but this committee, I want to give credit. Okay, I mean, there were very different opinions and conflicting opinions, but the one thing that everybody agreed upon was how to manage this property, how to develop it for the benefit of the town and what was in the best interests of the town. And that was sort of the overriding goal that everybody was committed to. So if you can get everybody sort of committed to an overarching goal,
Yeah, okay.
then you can start to work towards it. And then, there were subcommittees and various other committees that worked towards that goal. So.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you, Andrea. Scott, the next question for you is, you talked about that you have had experience with dealing with disabilities or many other aspects, and you were even part of the Scouts as well. Everyone has different opinions of what diversity is, and diversity has changed over the years as well. So in the past 5 years, since this committee was formed in 2020, where it was in the beginning or what your opinion was and where it is today, has your opinion, your understanding of DEI transformed or changed, or just help us understand what your thought process is?
So, as Joe knows the story here. So when we first formed the DEI committee, it was in the wake of the George Floyd. Well, it was a murder, is what it was. And I think there's a certain vision at the time, but let's say at the same time, we had a discussion in town about Columbus Day. So we assigned the DEI committee investigate this. And so to me, the unfortunate thing was the first year or two of DEI, it became about Columbus Day, which was never what I wanted or what you wanted. Because what I had envisioned was a town. About when we formed the committee, we'd had at the end of the Apple Blossom Parade, we'd had a celebration in the Abbott School. We had I think it was a Chinese dance group, which was just great to watch the music, the talent. So my vision of DEI had always been with Diwali. Okay, throw paint on the common. My vision had been, let's celebrate the cultures of Westford. Not the differences, right? And with the differences, but in a good way. Mm-hmm. So, my, I guess, desire for the committee had always been one of inclusivity in the sense of celebrating, who we are, who makes up Westford. And if you go back over time, there was, we were settled by, largely Puritan English settlers. But if you go through the history of Westford, we had the Russians, the Finns came to the mills. We've always had an inclusive atmosphere, and now it is typically more, Southeast Asians that are becoming part of our new immigrant community, and with all of the great food and art and music that we can enjoy because of that.
Okay, thank you for sharing.
Can-
What are
can
your
I-
thoughts, India? Do
I
you want
was
to
gonna
add?
s-
Yeah.
So if I can add something,
Yeah.
I certainly I agree with Scott. I hope moving forward that DEI can continue to be a leader, as it has been, in fostering and advocating for the diverse communities that we have. I think we've started to do that with, international, the celebration of International Day, where we've done that now for several years. Hopefully, we can continue to do that and even expand upon it, and gathering, different groups and different celebrations for that. The schools just had, what has now become a really sort of big and well-attended, event celebrating the Chinese New
Right, the
Year.
New Year.
That's I think is just absolutely terrific. I mean, we have the Indian flag raising on the Common, and so I think we've started to do this. My hope is we can grow on that even more, because I think the other word that I think belongs in DEI besides inclusiveness is belonging.
Belonging.
And I really hope that we continue to foster and develop and reach out to people so that they understand and have a sense that they belong in this community and they're welcomed and they're accepted in this community. And so that would be my vision as to how the committee expands moving forward.
And what I add to one of the things I like about Westford is the can-do idea.
Mm-hmm.
So when we first were approached by the Indian Greater Boston
IAGB, yeah.
Thank you. The first one, well, how are we going to make this work? We've got one flagpole. We can't have Indian flag and American flag. We can't take American. There was an obstacle, and the town was, we can fix that. We can buy 2 flagpoles.
Yeah.
So I've always appreciated Westford's idea of, okay, things should not get in the way of doing the right thing. How do we make it work? And I think it's the 25th. We're going to be having a Armenian Independence Day with that flagpole. With Gay Pride, we use those flagpoles.
Yep.
So, that first impetus has given us a solution that works across a lot of the whole spectrum.
And also, we shouldn't forget that we had the first celebration of Juneteenth last year as
yeah.
well.
Right.
So again, recognizing how do we make this work, we made it work, and we had that on the Common for the first time last year. So,
And we'll do that again as well. I mean, we so appreciate, and it's good to touch base with you because it reinforces for us where we're headed, and we always want to make sure that we stay in touch with the committee.
And what was really nice about the Juneteenth celebration is not only a celebration on the Common, but we involved the Westford Historical Society and the Commission, and had a speaker about talking about slavery here in Westford. I think a topic that nobody really was and is familiar with here in Westford. So I just, all of those events that have slowly evolved over the last 5 years, I think can be accredited to the DEI committee and to its leadership. And, like I said, it's my vision that we continue those kinds of events and that kind of leadership.
Well, we're so inspired by you and the school committee. Part of what our committee does, DEI committee, has been doing, and under actually Anjali's leadership, is the calendar, the multicultural calendar.
Which is fabulous. Okay, I look at that
Yeah.
calendar every month now.
And we add to it. If you look, just do a quick search on Google or any of the search engines, you'll find, if you ask about what is going on in April, there are probably 20 different reasons for April to be an important month in terms of different cultures and what's celebrated. And so we want to tap in, I think, even more to that in the spirit of the diversity that's here in Westford. Scott, tell us also about an accomplishment or accomplishments that you look back on, or maybe that you learned from.
So, I have probably 2 things, but I've got one sort of enduring memory of the past 12 years. That was the first night when we met remotely because of COVID, and we were all in our homes, and everyone, including us, were scared, and yet I remember thinking that night we could tell the town that all those town meetings when you wanted us to burn reserves, we didn't. we've got $6 million in reserve. No one loses their job in town for the fiscal year. We've funded, we'd added more firefighters and police, and so we have 2 paramedic trucks to roll. And if one is down for decontamination from COVID, there's a second one with medics ready to roll. We could be down 5 cops who are ill and maintain minimum manning on a police department. So we didn't know this was coming. We knew something bad could come, and the board and prior boards, had prepared the town for that. So that was one of the memories that long-term planning. Sometimes, in emergency, it pays off, and the other is I can remember looking at the town facility study, the one we had before this one, where basically they condemned Town Farm, and I think we actually had one selectman said we should just bulldoze it, and of course that was not what happened. And the outpouring of support from the community, a lot of diverse individuals on that task force to make it happen, and the complex financing to pull off these kinds of projects with state money and town money and federal money. But in the end, hopefully we're going to be saving that building. So as a historian and as a affordable housing advocate, this is just a win-win-win for the town, and that's not my accomplishment, it's accomplishment of a lot of people in town, but glad to be part of.
Wonderful.
Do you want to ask about the advice that these 2 esteemed public servants might give to future public servants?
Before you do that, the one other thing, we in talking about DEI and DEIB,
please,
that I also don't think we should lose track of is, we've talked about the various cultures here in town, but I also don't want to lose track of the fact is that, DEIB also includes our elderly, our disabled folks, and, our veterans, okay, and that I don't want to lose track of that. They're all also part of what I think the mission and the vision is of this committee. So I wanted to add that.
I so appreciate it. I mean, there's so many diversities, right, that we need to pay attention to.
Absolutely. And I think our focus was to also have a podcast with Catherine, who is the I think, chair or president for the Commission for Disabilities, and talk about that and make it as the mainstream conversations on an ongoing basis.
Yes.
Talk about the event that happened probably last week or the week before on neurodiversity. So completely agree with you that diversity and belonging is not only about different cultures, but about also people from different segments of life, because you want to make sure that everyone is included and feels that they do belong in the communities. So absolutely, thank you. Good suggestion to talk about that topic, Andrea. I wanted to touch base upon that. Yes, you have talked about how much you have learned and how long your career in the public services has been so far. So reflecting back on all of your learnings, contributions, what are some key nuggets that you could share with these new and oncoming members in the select board, and what should they watch out for, or and how can they be more effective? So just give me some really good nuggets.
Certainly be out in the community and listen, because it's very tempting to have a close set of friends or acquaintances or committee members, and that becomes your echo chamber. And so I was fortunate with kids in Scouts and 4-H and being part of the library. I was always out doing something, a book fair or whatever, and so you hear the needs of the town that you don't get from just being too exclusive, perhaps, right? So that's why I like the DEI. The inclusive is how you succeed, and I've been happy with this board, because for most of those 12 years, we don't always agree, but a 3-2 vote on a Tuesday night is a 5-0 vote Wednesday morning. We go forward. The town doesn't expect us to fight; they expect us to make things work. And I've been very happy with this board. And so my advice to the future board is, if you can get a consensus for the vote, and if you can't, when the vote goes, whatever it is, next morning, the town expects you to make this work.
So even if you're not aligned, and even if you're voting otherwise, you should be okay to let it go and move on and continue to contribute to the other causes that comes on your table, right? That's what I'm hearing.
When I first joined the board, I had a former selectman. I called and said, or I emailed, what's your advice? And I thought I would be told, watch for this budget item, watch for this state program, something concrete. And his advice was, take good care of the town.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he's right. And that's, if you always operate with the principle of what's best for Westford, you will screw up and you will have people that don't like you, but more often than not, you do the right thing.
Okay, good.
So it's interesting. When I called somebody and asked for advice, what was the best advice that an individual could give me, his advice to me was, when you make your decision, know that if you make your decision in the best interests of the town, then you have made the right decision. And I, like Scott, always tried to follow that, which was to make a decision in the best interests of the town. So that would be my advice to people who are joining the boards, is when you're making your decisions, please think in the best interests of the town. And then when you do that, also understand that there are going to be people who do not agree with you, and that is just the nature of the job. And as a board member, you have to be able to accept that. And that can be something that's very hard to do, because you will get emails, phone calls, questioning you, asking you why you made the decision, or telling you that you made the wrong decision. And you just, as a board, like I said, you need to accept that that's going to happen. But if you believe that you have made a decision in the best interests of the town, then that should be sort of your guiding post and your guiding point. And you should be able to tell that individual that that's what you've done, and to be comfortable with the decision you made. And I think the other piece of advice that I would give to new board members is, come in with an open mind, listen to other folks, not only on the boards, but in the community itself, so that you can learn from them. They may change your mind with something that they bring to your attention. So be open-minded to other folks, to other opinions, to other perceptions when you're making your decisions. And the final piece of advice I would be, which is sort of where I started in the beginning, is just be respectful to your fellow board members and to the community itself. They've put their trust in you when they elect you, and don't ever lose track of that as well. And so those would be the three pieces of advice I would give to anybody.
I think that's great advice. It's great advice, and I think that what animates everybody on the board is probably that same thing, that if you share that commitment to what's in the best interest, then that'll stand you in good stead.
One of my more humbling moments was when I ran for office. One of my scouts wrote a letter to the editor, then the Eagle, endorsing me, and I didn't ask for it. Now, it was for a merit badge and communications, but it reminded me that there are people watching us, and people watching how we act, and especially if you're a scout leader, that's supposed to mean something, and we have to behave, to be worthy. To Andrea's point, a lot of trust put in us. You have to behave in a way that's worthy of that trust.
Modeling the behavior, right? Exactly, being the leader of the community. Yes, you're right. You are being watched. So my takeaway from both of you was that be respectful, but be also resilient, because you may not make a lot of friends, and be ready for it. And it's okay not to make too many friends, but as long as your intentions are great and you're looking at the impact on the town, you are good. You are doing fine. Thank you.
We are over our time, but I have one more question. And Anjali and I talked about this. What is your and this is a little different than your advice, what is your hope for Westford as you leave this time? There'll be other probably contributions that you'll make in the future, but what is your hope for Westford?
I think, Westford has always been a welcoming town,
Mm-hmm.
okay? We're a town, if there is a tragedy, we come together and we address that tragedy. We help our folks. We help our townspeople in times of tragedy. And we come together in celebration as well. And we celebrate, happenings. And we're also a community that has history and a tradition. The Apple Blossom Parade, the Strawberry Festival Parade. I want to see Westford keep all of that, but at the same time, we've also been at the forefront of many issues. We were at the forefront of zoning in the 90s, okay? We are taking a strong position, I think, in leading the town in sustainability and becoming a green community. So I hope that the town will continue to maintain the balance between its history, its traditions, its celebrations, along with moving ahead for the future as well.
What do you think, Scott?
That's good.
When we hired consultants for a strategic plan, they asked for your greatest concern, which actually sort of, I guess in some ways, my greatest hope, which was we're a town of 25,000 plus people, and yet when you walk into town hall, they know your name. We are run like a town of 5,000 people, and I hope we can always kind of keep that idea that yes, we're a growing town. We're going to grow more with MBTA communities, but we don't lose sight of the fact that we want a small town feel. We want people to care about each other and feel like it's a tight community, even if it's a big, tight community.
Your point about MBTA communities is interesting, too, because that adds, in my mind, to the diversity. There's income diversity as well
Yes.
in Westford, which we need to maintain. Do you want to close this out?
With that being said, I just wanted to say thank you for coming over. And I know that this was really, really long due. I wish that we had both of you much early on. But we want to thank you on behalf of the DEI committee for your contribution, your support, and your guidance. And we will continue to come back to both of you to seek guidance for many other DEI efforts in the future. So just wanted to say thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us. It's been
a lot of fun.
And thank you for your service as well.
Yes.
I know, Joe, you've been Affordable Housing Trust before this, so I was sorry to leave the trust, but glad you found a new home to help out Westford.
It's been a wonderful experience. Anjali's a great partner, and I love the committee, and we love working with both of the boards as well.
And Anjali is a perfect example of somebody who found a place to get involved.
Right.
I did, yes, absolutely. And I keep encouraging others as well. Be deeply involved, because that's how you feel, and you get that feeling of belonging when you are contributing in some or the other
Yes.
ways.
So important. Well, thank you both
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.